wisdom,
prudentia,
justice,
justitia,
temperance,
temperantia,
courage.
fortitudo.
Applying ancient philosophy to modern life, this is the Sunday Stoic.
Welcome to the Sunday Stoic Podcast. This is Steve coming to you from Conway, Arkansas. This week we wrap up Book 10 of the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. Do you have any sayings you keep handy? Stoic sayings? You know, things like, hey, some things are in my power, some are not, so on and so forth. Marcus recommends we do. Have you ever reflected on your funeral and how people might act and how that might reflect on your feelings of death? Do you have an inner command center that you've been cultivating, sort of an inner consciousness, an inner or conscience, I should say, an inner sage that you can listen to, that can teach you, even if you can't always live up to its teachings? I feel like that's what Marcus Aurelius is doing in his meditations. He has learned a lot of philosophy, but you get the impression that he fails a lot. He's a person just like you and I. But he can listen to this command center, this voice of reason that he might consider a spark of a fragment of Zeus, let's say. He's learned all this philosophy. He's learned a lot of literature. He can combine it all together in new ways like we see in his writings. He can ask, what should a person do? And he can come up with an answer that to him seems the best answer as to what a sage would do in any given situation. That doesn't mean he can do it, but he can at least talk about it. And that's what we should try to do ourselves. So when we meditate on things, we can say, what would a sage do in this situation? And I think that's what Marcus is doing in a lot of situations. Or if not asking what would the sage do, it's his inner sage talking about problems, about things. This is how someone should act. This is how reality works. Something to consider when you're journaling yourself. But without any further yammering by your host, let's go to the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 10, number 34. He that is well tinctured with philosophy needs but a short receipt. A common cordial will keep up such a man's spirits and expel fear from his heart. For instance, quote, as leaves on trees the race of man is found, now green in youth, now withering on the ground. End quote. So your children are but leaves. Leaves, too, are the echoes of praise and censure, and silent blame and reproach. Leaves, too, are the continuance of fame. All these matters, like leaves, have their spring for growing, then a puff of wind sends them packing, and quickly after the wood is new furnished again. Things are strangely short-lived, and yet you fear and pursue them as if all were everlasting. But for all that, you will soon close your eyes, and then he that is your chief mourner will quickly want another for himself. Number 35. An eye that is strong and rightly disposed is indifferent to all colors. Therefore, if it calls for green, it is a sign it is weak and out of order. Thus, when the hearing and smelling are in good condition, they do not pick and choose their objects, but take in all manner of scents and sounds. Thus, a strong stomach dispatches all that comes into it, like a mill that grinds all sorts of grain. And thus a mind that is sound and healthy is prepared to digest all sorts of accidents. And therefore, when it is clamorous in such wishes as these, quote, oh, that my children may live and flourish, and that I may be commended for everything I do, end quote. When the mind, I say, is thus sickly, it is just like an eye that is all for green colors, and like a set of teeth that would touch nothing by their good will but soft things. Number 36. There is nobody so happy in his family and friends but that some of them, when they see him going, will rejoice at his death. Let him be a person of probity and prudence. Somebody or other will drop some of these sentences over his grave. quote, "Well, our man of order and gravity is done. We shall now be no more troubled with his discipline." I cannot say he was ill-natured to any of us. For all that, I am sensible he condemned us in his heart. End quote. This is the best treatment a good man must expect. But alas, as for our conduct, how many reasons will people muster up to be rid of us? If you consider this when you are dying, you will quit life with less reluctance. Say then to yourself, "I am leaving an odd sort of world, where the sharers in my fortune and the objects of my care and kindness, those people for whom I have drudged and contrived and wished so heartily, count my life no better than a grievance, and would fain to be rid of me." Now, who would be fond of staying in such a company any longer? However, this thought must not go so deep as to sour your humor. You must keep your temper, and be part friendly with everybody. But then your good nature must not make you hang back. For, as when a man has an easy death, the soul slides gently out of the body, so you must walk off handsomely, and bid the world adieu, without regret. It is true, nature has twisted your interests and tied you together, but now she loosens the knot and makes the sign to disengage. I will part then with the world as with my friends and relations, but for all my kindness I will not be dragged from them, but go of my free will, for this too is ordained by nature. Number 37. Let it be your constant method to look into the design of people's actions, and see what they would be at, as often as it is practicable. And to make this custom the more significant, practice it first upon yourself. Number 38. Remember that what pulls and hales you from one passion to another is but your fancy within you. There lies the rhetoric that persuades you. That is the live thing, and to speak plainly, that is the man after all. But when you talk of a man, I would not have you tack flesh and blood to the notion, nor those limbs neither, which are made out of it. These are but tools for the soul to work with. Now, the only difference is that nature has glued them, as it were, to the soul, but the use of them depends solely upon the mind. It is the will that either checks or sets them going. They have but the force of instruments, and signify no more without foreign direction than a shuttle, a pen, or a whip, which will neither weave nor write nor lash the horses without somebody to manage them. All right, in the first reading, Marcus is talking about keeping sayings at hand. He says you can keep these sayings at hand to help you out. For example, remind yourself that people are like leaves. They are here one minute and gone the next. They scatter on the ground and are soon replaced by more leaves. And pretty soon, it'll be your turn. And then the people who were at your funeral will also have mourners at their funeral. That's sort of how this reading ends. It's to remind yourself of the cycle of life. You are put together by elements of nature, atoms and molecules and things. You are here one minute and you're here with people, and then you die. You are recycled back to the cosmos. Then the people who mourn you also die. They are recycled, and a whole new crop of people come out who won't even know who you were. A leaf on an oak tree outside does not mourn the leaves from last year. They are gone. They are part of the soil that enriches the oak tree now. They served their purpose. They did their duty. And now their duty is gone. In the next reading, he talks about how an eye would be defective if it said, "Oh, I only want to see the color green, just green, just green." No. An eye takes in whatever it is shown. A nose or an ear, the same thing. If an ear only wants to hear pleasant sounds, it's not a very good ear. A stomach. I have a stomach that doesn't always like what I feed it. I understand what he's saying here. It's not very useful when it fights you. Just like the mind. Oh, how the mind likes to fight, right? If a mind wants only tranquility and peace and happiness, but now it has to deal with unpleasant things and it fights you, that is not a sound mind. A mind that only wants to see good things, or a mind that hopes for only good things. I hope my children are safe. I hope that I am praised for everything I did. That is a mind that is acting like an eye that only wants to see green. It's begging for things that can't possibly be. As he says here, it's like teeth that only want to choose soft foods. What's the point? The mind has to be more robust than that. It has to be able to deal with reality. In the next reading, he talks about being on a deathbed and how even if a sage were to die, there would be people that would stand around the grave and say, well, he never said anything bad about me, but I could tell inside he was judging me. I'm glad he's dead. And he's like, so this is the world you're worried about departing? It's your duty to live. It's your duty eventually to die. It's part of your assignment. And when you realize that, even among my group of friends and family, a good chunk of them will be like, sweet, I wonder what I'm inheriting from him. Ooh, man, I'm glad he's dead because I could tell he didn't approve of the way I was living. Maybe it makes it a little easier to let go and slip away. Why would you want to prolong this life here if this is the way that half the people you know are going to treat you or think of you after your death? But death is in accord with nature, so one should not fear it. Hopefully one slips away easily, as he says. Like the soul slipping easily from the body, if we don't fight it, we accept it, we will slip away from our loved ones and family lovingly when it's time to go. The number 37, he says that we should ask whenever we see someone doing anything, like passing us on the highway or yelling at someone or doing a good deed, whatever it is, we could ask ourselves, what is their intention for doing this? And more importantly, he says, ask yourself, what is my intention for doing this action, whatever the action is. The important thing to note here is Stoics try to judge people by their intentions, not by their actions or the results of their actions. Remember, they believe that people are always trying to do good, even if they are misguided. So you can ask yourself, why am I doing this? Oh, maybe I'm assuming fame is a good thing, so I'm pumping out YouTube videos every day. Maybe that's stupid. Maybe I assume that me getting to work is a good thing, and this person cutting me off gets in the way of that, so I am angry. So question yourself and question others. And of course, we have to be careful about that because you cannot actually be in someone else's head. So anytime you are trying to assume someone else's intention, you are taking a risk there of false assumptions. But we can try. And we usually, I think the Stoic way is to try to assume the best of intentions on the other person's part. They were doing what they thought was right. Okay, that makes it easier for you to deal with the consequences of their actions. And lastly, remember that you are basically a puppet being controlled by the master within you. And here he's talking about your ruling faculty. It's that inner piece of Zeus, as it were, although we often don't cultivate it or listen to it, and so we go astray. But we must listen to that inner voice, and we must realize, according to Marcus, our hands, our body, that's just a tool for this inner being, this piece of our soul or mind, as it were. These are tools to get things done, to put philosophy into practice. But it all comes down to that inner self that we're trying to cultivate. Just like a pen is useless without a writer, the body is useless without this inner being. And our body is not going to be good at doing things, at accomplishing things, unless we cultivate a sound inner mind, a mind that can deal with whatever comes at it, a mind that can handle fate, that can look at fortune in the eye and say, bring it on, let's see who wins. Then we can accomplish things. We can judge people by their intentions rather than the way they carry them out or their lack of carrying them out. We can judge ourselves and improve ourselves by doing these things. So, I recommend you read the Meditations yourself. I highly recommend the Robin Waterfield translation, the Meditations Annotated Edition. I highly recommend that translation. It's a modern translation that's easy to read. The Gregory Hayes version is also very easy to read, and it's a different translation. You might want to have both of them on hand if you can. But check them out, read them, make your own interpretations. You are cultivating your own inner sage. Let that sage speak to you. Let it imbibe this information and turn it into wisdom. When it's in the book, it's just information. It's up to you to take it in, mix it with what you already know, your life experiences, combine that together, and that is the root of your wisdom. Get out there and make some wisdom, put it into action, and seize the day. And before I sign off, I will be taking a vacation, so I'll be back soon. So there may not be a new episode for the next little bit. But you'll be all right. I want you to cultivate your own inner wisdom. Report back to me. Let me know how it goes. SundayStoic@gmail.com. Get out there. Seize the day. Carpe diem.